discuss this, I'm joined live from Rugby in England by political commentator Professor Tim Wilson. Professor Wilson, I want to thank you for joining us again here today on A News. It's lovely to see you. I should first of all make it clear that this is a work event and not a party before we continue. And that very expression belies the whole absurdity of the current situation. What can you tell us of the latest developments since Boris Johnson's apologies yesterday at question time?
Well, the Conservative Party, if you look at that film and you look at the Conservative members of Parliament ranged behind Boris, normally they are shouting and bashing their papers and saying how pleased they are with whatever he's saying. They're punctuating what he's saying with lines like "here, here." None of that is happening. They are listening in silence, and we now know that at least 3 senior backbench MPs and indeed the leader of the Conservative Party in Scotland, these people have openly gone on record asking Boris to resign. And Douglas Ross, I think, is the most alarming because he is the leader of the Conservatives in Parliament. He is somebody who resigned when Dominic Cummings went to test his eyesight in Barnard Castle. So we know that he takes a moral stand. We know that he is prepared to follow through. And I think it's very alarming that the Scottish Conservatives, the Scottish Conservatives he leads, have made it very clear they want Boris to resign. The mutterings are getting louder and louder in his own party. And no matter what he says about waiting for Sue Gray to reach her conclusions, the Conservative Party has a history of turning on leaders that it thinks are not going to succeed in the next election. One remembers very, very graphically the sacking of Mrs. Thatcher.
Right.
But there is a history of this, and the Conservative Party is not kind to people that it thinks are not going to win. And Boris, whatever Boris does, he might survive for a little while. I don't think now he's going to command success in any future election. So he is no longer a winner. And his only asset from the Conservative point of view was the fact that he could appeal to the voter. Now, as you pointed out, in a snap poll on the street, many of the voters think that he should go, think that he's had his time. And the 1922 committee, which is the committee which was set up literally 100 years ago this year, this is the senior committee of backbench members of Parliament, members of the Conservative Party in Parliament. They require 54 Conservative sitting politicians to write letters of no confidence before an election of the leader is triggered. That could well happen in the next few days.
So
we know that Douglas Ross has already written.
Indeed. As you say, this is all a big game of politics at the moment to see. I'm sure there's weighing up whether or not Boris Johnson is going to hold things for the Conservatives, and of course anybody levelling a criticism against him is also maybe weighing up their future and some thinking about, well, maybe I can take that position. But what's the...
Well, I think,
sorry, yes.
I was going to say, I think a lot of people who might be thinking they want to lead the Conservative Party, they want to become Prime Minister, might also be thinking very seriously, now may not be the best time. This is a poison chalice. They are inheriting the COVID problem, which they cannot control. They're inheriting the Brexit problem, which is controlled by the COVID problem. Mm-hmm. So in order to be successful in the next election, the party is going to have to demonstrate that it has made Brexit work. That may bring back those Conservative voters who would have preferred to remain in Europe. It's not necessarily going to bring back those ex-Labour voters, what is often called the red wall of northern voters who voted for the Conservative Party this time and so guaranteed Boris such a surprising victory in the last election. I think those voters have already gone back to Labour. Conservative Party does now, it's unlikely to appeal and succeed in getting those back. But is somebody going to be able to get the lost Conservative voters, the ex-Conservative voters back? I think that's unlikely. And the two big candidates to succeed Boris, the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, and Liz Truss, the new Foreign Secretary, these are both tarred with the same brush. They're in the same cabinet. And significantly, they tried to distance themselves from Boris yesterday. And both of them kept quiet until the evening before they both tweeted support. You get the impression they were doing so reluctantly. And Rishi Sunak went all the way down to Devon. He was 200 miles away from Westminster during this extraordinary piece of theatre, which was managed, I thought, which was managed so much better by Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, than anything he has done so far. He demonstrated power of the dispatch box. He was suddenly able to show what a magnificent lawyer he is, what a superb performer he is as a prosecutor. And Boris looked like a scolded, naughty schoolboy. So we've got two major stories at the moment running at the same time. We've got Prince Andrew, who doesn't seem able to admit what he's done, and the delaying tactics which his lawyers have recommended or which he's insisted on. These have not played well. And Boris, who again, similarly, would not come clean, was playing delaying tactics. Was he or was he not at a party? Did parties happen? Well, we'll wait and see. And in both cases, both characters, both Prince Andrew and Boris, have found themselves in a sticky mess because they didn't come clean early enough, I think.
Indeed. Just before I do want to ask you about Prince Andrew, but first of all, on Boris Johnson. Today, you mentioned also the north of England. He was due to go up to visit the north today, but again, using your phrase, like a naughty schoolboy maybe missing a test. He's thrown a sickie today as somebody's close contact apparently has COVID. What is the public feeling about all of this, particularly in light of the fact that in the past, Downing Street, in my memory, has always been seen as a rather serious place, and now it sounds like the sort of place where you can't tell if there's a difference between a party going on or whether work's being done?
Well, I think the popular sentiment is not good. The European position has always been to paint Boris as a clown, and I think that position has now been adopted here pretty well universally. Some people think, some people would take the view that who is there who can replace him, and I think that's a serious problem. So, for example, Rishi Sunak, who is one of the candidates to replace him, Rishi Sunak, during the height of the COVID crisis, was busy building in a very expensive swimming pool, a gym with 4 showers in his country house. This doesn't reflect well on him when at the same time he was cutting benefits for the poorest in our country. So Liz Truss seems to be a person who wags her finger at nations like Russia and doesn't seem to do very much. There isn't a viable alternative to Boris, and I don't think even the Labour Party is in the right shape to take over number 10 at the moment, though, as I say, Keir Starmer performed brilliantly, really for the first time yesterday at the dispatch box. So one of the problems when you talk to people is they will say, well, Boris is doomed, but who can take over? What future is there? And as I say, it's a poison chalice, whoever takes over.
Absolutely. So it would be interesting to see how this develops, and we will see in the coming months and so on how things evolve as inevitably time goes on. But as you also mentioned, the other high-profile denier, if you like, is Prince Andrew, and now his case is going to go forward in the United States. what are people seeing about him and this situation?
We're in a very similar situation. He has lost public support, and the general feeling on the street is that he has been evasive. I feel also an American court, which is very much led by public opinion, is going to interpret evasion as guilt. And that is the problem. So if he goes forward and tries to defend himself, we are going to have week after miserable week of headlines, when the headline should be supporting Her Majesty the Queen and her Platinum Jubilee. And the alternatives are that he pays off Virginia Giffey, which today there are articles suggesting that she doesn't want to be paid off. She wants her day in court. She wants to be proven right. That's extremely worrying. And again, we come back to the issue that if he had dealt with this earlier, maybe it wouldn't have got to this point. I personally think there's every possibility he is, in fact, innocent, but he has behaved like a guilty man. And that is the problem. Perception is the issue. And the same thing actually could be said of Boris. Boris has behaved like a guilty person. And so now, coming out and saying, oh, I thought it was a work event, perfectly understandable. Number 10 is both a workplace, a very busy workplace, and a home. I can very well see that he could be misled. But the evasion doesn't play well for that understanding. And similarly, one option for Prince Andrew would be for him to ignore the case completely and for a default ruling against him to be made, which would mean that he's effectively trapped in this country, but he is anyway. And he would then have the moral option to say, well, I simply ignored the case. It was beneath my dignity to deal with it. But he doesn't have that option anymore because of the infamous BBC Newsnight interview that he gave when he talked about anhydrosis. As far as I know, anhydrosis is a problem that affects horses, not human beings, an inability to sweat. There is no medical evidence that human beings develop this problem after they've been exposed to serious anxiety, serious terror after they've been in the Falklands War. There is no evidence of this. There's no medical testimony. So it's a very, very rare case. If it is so rare, why is the medical profession not rushing to Prince Andrew's side to do some sort of serious research on this fascinating medical phenomenon? But they're not, because I think most people don't believe it. And because of this and the absurd story about the pizza in Woking, where he took his daughter, Princess Beatrice, the point is nobody has come forward and says, oh, well, I was there. If I was in a pizza parlor and the Prince and the Duke of York